Hello, Thomas Greil and Anka Sedladkova. I'm delighted to have this time with you two today to know a little bit more, to go into the details of this beautiful project that you both engage with, this project that you've called Making Connections. So before we go in there, maybe you'd like to share a little bit about your background and your experience in the field of PMC and infant developmental movement education, as this is the soil where the project grows from.
Yeah, to myself, I'm since more than 20 years, I'm a BMC practitioner. Then I became a teacher, starting to teach in the body-mind centering certification program. And soon after, I became an infant developmental movement educator, and also very soon had to start to teach that work, which is basically the development in the first year of life, how to support typical developing babies. And so over many years, I worked with children with special needs. And 2014, I think we created this project Sparks, also with Anka and many others. And it's an ongoing research for us to find out what we can do in this field. I personally continue teaching body-mind centering, and I'm very interested in neural plasticity and how we can overcome habits, how we can transform, and how we not only personally are a part of this development, but we are in a developmental field with many others, how we are embedded in our social context, in the culture, and how our relationships create what we call the self. And so that's a little bit my approach to this work, to not see it only individually change, but to see how communities or how relationships are also playing into change.
My background is in dance. I was studying dance and teaching and performing. In the same time, I had to share my passion and love for dance with love for my family and 2 children. So when my children were very small, I was already kind of combining movement and moving with them and playing, which was kind of the nature of my being. After doing the course BNPs, basic neurological patterns, in that time, I was so much inspired, and I felt this strong need to share this work with parents. So maybe a year after the course, I started to work with a group of parents and children. And a friend of mine from the States, she gave me some of the yellow physio balls, like 4 of them. So that was the kind of the ground for my exploration in this field. And in that time in Slovakia, there was nothing for babies and parents, like no movement activities. So actually the field was so empty, and people started to love the work, the classes. So we started to have a lot of interest. And like working with the babies, also the families with special needs came, and there was a question, oh, maybe you also, what do you think? Could we? And of course I said yes, because I'm always jumping into new things, because I'm very curious. And so I started to meet families and started to gain a little bit more experience about like what is this field I didn't know before at all.
Thank you, Anka. So maybe, as you already pointed out, this project, making connections as a way to stepping in the field of infant movement education, maybe you can tell us some more about the axial ideas of the project and how does it become a project, and where does it go, where does it pretend to, or inspires or aspires to go to? What are the steps that follow the creation of the project, and what's the intention maybe behind it?
Yeah, maybe like the guiding idea since long time is how to shift the focus or to enlarge the focus, so it's not only on the child in what the child can do or not can do, but also see the context of the family, but then also even bigger, what is the context of the family? So where what's happening with the parents and the support for the parents. We try to look at all the connections, like the network or the field of connections a child is in, and we believe that in the relationships, it's not in the individual person where the change needs to happen, but in the relationship, in the relational field between the child and the mother, the father, the caregivers, the grandmother, maybe the siblings, or a dog or a cat. So to see it in a much bigger context, and so also to offer support for the child, of course, because that is the main focus, but also offer support for the parents and offer support for professionals who want to know more about this work. Mm-hmm. So making connection in that sense is, of course, how we can make connections between movement and the brain, like how, that's what I said earlier, the brain plasticity is like at the center, also how we can change something in an ability of a child. But that without the context of who is caring for the child and who is caring for the one who is caring, and how this all needs to work together to learn from the situation and participate in this learning process. That's what is making connections, from the micro movements, from moving a finger or moving a body part, or making connection with the movement of the arm and the shoulder or the hip joint, to the connection with the mother or father or caregiver, to connection to space, to objects. So from the micro to the macro.
I get this like really systemic view, of not just the child, but who supports the child, who supports the family, who supports an understanding the facilitation of the work as multi-layered and multi-leveled. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what I get from this is then it's not only that the support is focused on all these many levels, but also the information that you receive, that we receive as facilitators, it also comes from all these many levels. So when you only attending the child, then you only get information from the child, and through the child from how the child is looked after and how is his environment or her environment. But when we're looking at the larger picture, then you also receive information from all these many levels that supports us as facilitators to integrate all these many levels and layers of information to provide a richer or more multi-scaled facilitation
So for me, it's also a lot of like focus on parents, how to bring a little bit more comfort to the situation, and maybe just to feel, oh, I am very important, and my child, and what we know together, or what the family brings. So to put the attention to that, what is already happening, and to develop that further, and not to be so much influenced from the outside and from the directions. I'm also thinking a lot about like how to bring this idea of like the continuity, also the continuity of the development, maybe also with children with special needs, a little like really slowing down and maybe breaking down the details, or into even more details than usually, which for me is a fascinating learning environment. What are the elements of some, you know, kind of pathways? But also I'm thinking a lot about like bringing to the family the kind of feeling of not separating things, like everything is actually happening all the time. So there is not the therapy and at home, and you know, we are together, and but then we have to do the therapy. But actually everything, like, yeah, everything what we do is part of our development.
I would say that maybe one of the biggest resources when you work with a child are the parents, because after a very short time, when when the first shock of maybe a difficult birth or medical interventions or whatever, like when this first shock is kind of a bit away, the parents often they start to gather information in an incredible way, and they're looking for different approaches, and they became really experts of their child, because they don't trust just one. Often they don't trust just one resource, but they checking out different resources, different therapies, and then after a very short time they are experts for their child, and it's really, I think you miss a lot if you don't ask the parents about their child, if you don't include them in this whole process. It's
Mm.
besides that, the parents are with the child the whole time. So I think one thing we would like to bring is like a change in quality, not only a change in what you do or what the parents do with the child, but also how they do it. Sometimes it's not even, sometimes I see like a physical therapist or other therapists do similar things than we do, but the big difference is how we do it, with what quality we are taking the child, we are touching the child, we're moving the child. I think that's a very important aspect
Oh.
of our work. And so making connection means also how is the connection between me and the child, the parents, the caregivers with the child. How am I affected by the child? How I can, how the parents can learn that they also can let the child initiate and be affected. So there is the connection is like bidirectional or multidirectional. It's not just I do something with the child, or the child cries and I get stressed, or like, or often it's seen like there's a cause and an effect, and it's just in one direction, and then I react, and it's. But how can we see that it's like more diffused, and there is not like one center, but there is so many. This web is, like you said, Patricia, the web is so multidimensional, and there can things emerging here and emerging there, and there is an and there's an ability forming here, or a new skill added here, and so that it's quite malleable in the way. And that actually is what neuroplasticity is about. It's not about reinforcing one pathway, but it's like to bring learning to the whole network. So the whole interconnected system can change in some way and learn something new ability.
That's beautiful. I was, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of how what we do is different and what's at the base of that difference. And I was thinking about this idea you mentioned several times in your article, the importance of attunement, and how do we attune through listening, this attunement happening through listening, and this listening that is really um, subtle and open in all these many directions and dimensions. And then you were mentioning something about the attunement being circular, and I really like this idea, you know, how we can change this one direction from this circularity in the direction of attunement and listening. So there is something that is circling and is gathering information, and is constantly traveling from the child to the parents to the larger system to the community and back to the micro level, micro level. So maybe, I don't know, you wanna develop this central idea or this key aspect of the attunement and the listening in the work we do, and how this might be.
Even starting in one organism, in one body, you have that multiplicity. So you have, I mean, I'm holding since long time this question: how is it possible that from these many cells, the trillions of cells we have, and the fluids and all kind of stuff we have, how is it possible that out of that emerges a sense of that we are the ones doing something, that we think, we talk, we act in the world? How is that possible? So already, I think already there, you have this question of attunement, how this all works together, how there is a, if it not works all together, you have quite some problems, and that's what children and families with special needs are facing, that things are not working so well together. And so how out of these multiple trillions of parts some functions can appear. And I think that is an interesting aspect, how we attune, or we bring more attunement to more coordination, more flow. So these parts can organize in a different way. And it's like this image of a circle or a sphere is very, very nice to bring that, because then it's also, when you come to the perception also of the world, it's, and the self, the perception of self, it's expanding into the environment, and the environment is expanding inwards, so to say. It's like taken in and taken out, so there is not so a sharp boundary between in and out. It's kind of a shore, like a zone of between in and out.
When I try to kind of translate it into also what I feel and what is my intention when I work with the families, is like, what are also for us the tools to open up the space between me and the parent and the child and maybe the other therapist, that we can kind of experience this kind of pulsating space. and we can wait, and we can act, and we can kind of, yeah, maybe be also tuned into those life forces and all the forces around us. Yeah, so there is a lot of support for this, because all the forces are here for us to support us if we allow the system to kind of be aware of it or play. So for me, it's also brings a lot of images of dancing together. Maybe not so much in the big space, but through the inner space. Yeah. Also, the word simplicity comes up for me with this very complex way. It's like, oh, I'm here and you are here. Yeah. Because I think for the parents or the therapist also is a lot of like, oh, maybe we should do this, and maybe a lot of kind of like thinking about the actions, what to do. But this is a different kind of like field, and maybe some action will appear, or the child will show us, oh, I want this.
Well, also very concretely, what we do sometimes is to play with the constellation. Like you have usually the most simple constellation is like you have a therapist or educator, you have the child, and then one extra person, the mother or a caregiver or the father, and sometimes then the father. But the most simple constellation is three, and and, and you can arrange these three people in space in very different ways, and that then when we did this with professionals, it opens completely new worlds for them, because they are used to okay, I'm here, the mother and the child is there, then the mother gives me the child and I work with the child. Okay, that's the basic setup, and the mother observes, or the caregiver observes. Now if you change that, if you, okay, the child stays with the caregiver, and then the therapist or the educator gives some instructions how to hold the child or how to work with the child. So you can imagine all kind of different constellations, which already breaks up certain habits, which can bring up other abilities in the child.
Also, what I feel is very kind of interesting. Usually the parents are facing this with the other therapists or medical doctors, like, oh, the child is not doing this, and still it's not doing this. So the focus is a lot on what the child is not doing. But for me, it's really fascinating to kind of see what the child is doing, and then to ask parents, oh, I see this, and maybe just to ask more questions, but also to teach the parents to see those small steps the child is doing, and maybe the small changes. Because my experience is that sometimes the parents like say, oh, I said, oh, what's new? Nothing is new. And then we look together, and then we see, oh, this, oh, look, the child now is doing this and this. And I think that's very, very, very supportive for the parents. Maybe also for this, what we were talking about, opening up to the space. So observation, but also like acknowledging and appreciating what the child is doing, and where the child is on that journey to whenever he or she can go.
Very interesting in the sense that a new ability is easier to emerge when it's attached to an already existing ability. So when you just want the child to do something, it's very different than when you first you see what is the child actually able to do, and then from there you start to bring in a new skill or a new ability or a new movement. I think it's based also on this idea of a network, that things need to work together to function. And so if you try to teach a child, or a child learns something new, and you just practice that ability, I think you don't get as far as if you connect that ability to already existing abilities. So that learning is much easier if you're not putting on top of it, but you connect it. You just bring it into this network.
This is very interesting to me, as it brings a kind of a dialogue between known and familiar and unknown. So Anka was mentioning before, as we work with other professionals, or we work with the family, we open this field of not knowing, so we don't jump with a protocol or with a treatment plan that steps over the presence of the moment and the holding of the moment. So there is something very skillful about being in the unknown, in the presence of what is about to emerge, and to be able to hold that space for that to emerge without jumping with pre-made conclusions or ideas. And then something that you're naming now, Thomas, which is really beautiful, is like the ability to notice what is familiar and what is safe and what is known for the family, for the baby, for the constellation that we have. So we depart from this sense of safety and security, so we can explore also the unknown. So that's this dialogue between known and unknown that I feel is very unique to this approach, the ability to be in both and to hold both and to transmit the value of both. So we're not always on the track of knowing what's next and what's going to happen next and what's the what you call it, the prescription for what's going to happen next. But we can add that level of familiarity and security, so babies and families can find themselves in tune with their skills and their abilities, and from there we can explore. So this dialogue between these two aspects and polarities of the learning process is very beautiful. That recognizing that we're also learning when we don't know, when we sit it in a place of potential something to emerge. So.
Yeah, I think it's a very important aspect, because children with special needs don't move as much as other children. Like when you watch a baby in 1 minute, it moves incredible. It does incredible movement all the time. It's like self-stimulating. It gets feedback. There's so much learning happening in just a few minutes. For a child with special needs, it's usually completely different. So so this limitation prevents them from a learning process. And so you need to take them to this learning edge, like when you say these two things, so acknowledging what is there. But if you stay with what is there, it's very difficult to learn something new, because it's already in its limitations there, and the parents often adapt to that. I mean, and that's very good, because you cannot force the child all the time to do something it cannot do. So the environment also adapts to the child, to the needs of the special needs of the child. But then you also need to take the child to an edge where there is something new to learn. So there is it's a bit out of the comfort. So it's not the most comfortable. And we often, like in BMC, we have all this work about the reflexes, the writing reaction, equilibrium responses, and actually it's a lot there. It's like where when a child is just laying down, these reactions are not much stimulated, but as soon as you bring it up to sitting or in other positions, the child needs to adapt. I mean, it's basically also the idea of boba therapy, which Bonnie also studied. We work with the big physio balls and we work with balance and all that. But the idea behind is it's to bring the child into a position where it needs to react. And it's like an edge for learning, for getting a bit out of that comfort zone, but still keeping the safety and the safe and comfortable environment so the learning doesn't become interrupted by frustration.
Yeah. In this sense, I'm also like thinking about the parent being very, very active part of environment. And sometimes parent is maybe in the role of environment, sometimes is in the role of the child, somehow like also kind of allowing the child experience something what the child cannot experience herself or himself. Um, and also, so then what I feel we can also bring is like, what is this environment? Is it kind of the furniture which is squared, or the environment, you know, has many different possibilities to or slow down and, you know, be a little faster or rounder or kind of more firm. So all those choices we have and we can also bring to the child to experience.
As you were moving, Anka, I couldn't stop help thinking about tone and matching tone, and that you giving these different ways of relating to the environment. And I was thinking about this aspect of how do we meet the tone, and we start the dialogue from where the child and the family is, and we offer new possibilities for experiencing tonic relationships with self and others. So with my own body, if I can experience as a parent a different relationship with my own body and a different tone in relating to the earth, then I can hold my baby in a different way. I can start opening new tonic relationships that obviously affect my own relationship with myself and my environment, and therefore the relationship with the child, and the same with the child. If the child can experience a different tonic relationship with itself, with the earth, with the environment, then there's all these possibilities merging. And I was just thinking about that sophistication, because when we talk about tone, then we can talk about tone in a very general way, but then we can be very detailed about where, at what level we experience and listen to tone, on the expression of tone. And in BMC, we have like tone that can be in the relationship, the tone of the relationship. It can be the tone of the different tissues, organs, muscles, bones. So we have all this, the language of tone that is in many different levels, at the level of the organism, but also at the level of the relationship in the family system, with the professionals, with the place where the session takes place. So bonding and establishing a relationship through tone, would you say, is that something very specific or unique to our approach?
I think it's specific that we are naming it and that we are bringing awareness to it.
Mm.
I've seen many other therapists who you would say, naturally do it. It's like they, there's a big range of what a person brings to the work, and like Anka, what you were showing is also like a posture a therapist or an educator can have. Are they more soft? They're more rigid, more hard. It's like surfaces. It's like the wall or a ball. It's like different qualities, and so I think the specificity specificity of BMC maybe is that we bring awareness to it, and we say it's not just a given. You can learn it. You can. It's something you can learn and you can change. You know, sometimes people think it's a given thing, or how do we teach people to be soft with each other? No, there is something we can explore and bring to a very valuable thing to bring to the parents and to the professionals and the child, that the change of tone, the tone can modulate, adapt, and needs to be able to have dynamic relationships.
I think we all have different ways how we deal with the like the matching or not matching the tone, or asking, maybe some therapists are asking the parents to match the therapist's tone, right? So what are the different matching of the tones? I think for me, it's a lot about trying to see where they are and how can I react? What is my response? And lately, I found this great tool I'm using a lot, and it's really sounding. It's the tone. Uh, uh, the tone and sounding, which kind of like brings to the space the vibration, and I feel it's much easier to, especially the children, kind of catch this tonal, the sounding, and it's much easier than to swim in the space together. And sometimes also the parents are like, oh, we are also singing. I sing him at home. So there is an invitation for the parents to share what they do, what they enjoy with the child.
In terms of making connections, I understand that making connections is a focus on application of the new work in the area of special needs.
Well, it's the work with the typically developing babies and the observation of the development of babies, and to develop from observation to facilitation, how to touch babies, how to support patterns. That, I think that's at the base also for the work with the children with special needs. It's this particular view on development with many details. And what's particular, I think, then what's particular with the children with special needs is like the to see that these children don't move like a typical developing children. So like how to bring aspects of what we have observed, like using that frame of the development in the first year of life as a kind of a landscape for identifying steps, maybe little steps, maybe bigger steps, or little movements, like what's necessary to open a new pathway, or open a new way to feel in, like what's happening inside the body, and then to use that to move into space. or to move a body part. And through that, I think that's where the new connections are made. The new connections with the environment, but also within the nervous system.
I'm also thinking a lot about like how to bring this idea of like the continuity, also the continuity of the development, maybe also with children with special needs, a little like really slowing down and maybe breaking down the details or into even more details than usually, which for me is a fascinating learning environment. What are the elements of some, you know, kind of pathways? But also I'm thinking a lot about like bringing to the family the kind of feeling of not separating things, like that everything is actually happening all the time. So there is not the therapy and at home and, you know, we are together and but then we have to do the therapy. But actually everything, like, yeah, everything what we do is part of our development.
I think that the ITMI work provides the frame,
Mm-hmm.
like the developmental frame is like it's not only a child is like laying, then rolling, coming to sitting. Like this is one very gross view. Like the child comes from laying on the back or on the belly to walking at some point and starting to talk. But in the ITMI work and BMC work, we look at many details of that development. And as a sensory, motor, emotional, relational development, psychophysical development. And so I think this what we do with typical babies, or what we observe in typical babies, is a frame for what we want to see also in a child with special needs. And maybe it takes 10 years, or maybe it takes 3 years, or maybe some aspects are not so important and other aspects are more important. So maybe one transition is more important than another transition. And um, we, I think that it's the relationship to the ITMI work. It's like the ITMI work develops, provides the frame, and it provides already skills for facilitation, which you can use then for working with children with special needs. And I think what is a big difference is that we see development as a process. So it's never something where you arrive, oh, I have this skill and now I just using that skill. It's always a process of learning. I mean, that's at the center is the learning. So that's why we, in some way, we say it's not a therapy, but it's learning, which sometimes the therapeutic effect, if you want to call it like that, is even stronger than in therapy, because the learning is connecting to all already, what we said, already existing skills. So it's expanding.
What makes making connections, which is this idea of the three spheres, as I understand. Also the possibility of observing the subtleties of applying this work with special needs, and these things that you're discovering, how the parents are slightly more involved, slightly more vulnerable maybe too, because they have this role of being parents and therapists. How do we accompany that? So those things are the diamonds, I think, of making connections, is what maybe you are addressing, as I understand.
If we observe the movement of the child, I think there are many aspects of making connections which we can see where is a missing connection in the movement of the child, where is something we can support, where is a pattern to kind of carve out, and where there are maybe patterns or habits which are not so functional, not so useful. So I think this idea of making connections applies also very much also to the organization, the orientation of the child with special needs in space or in relation to itself, to gravity, the movement of the head, the movement of the ankles. I mean, there are so many details which play into the whole uh,
Yeah.
movement organization. And it's just the idea of the project or this of making connection extends from the mini connections in the body to the connections into the environment, into the space.
I guess for me, like at this point, there was a question between, as I'm also finding out as we go in, what this making connections is as a project. So the project, what's the development? Because we're talking about infant development. So how is the development of this project? And how does it arrive to this crystallization of making connections, this idea, and what's the structure also that is providing the support for this project to link with parents, with children, with the BMC community and the world. So maybe we can know a little bit more about developmental process and ideas behind.
Maybe just briefly to like what comes out of this, what we were talking is the idea that that we need to really address the child, that's for sure, but then also the parents and the professionals. So it has kind of, this project has like three not separate areas, but three interlacing areas, which is to support the child in the development through individual sessions with the presence of the parents or the caregivers. And so the learning can be a collective, kind of a communal learning. But then also as a second important area to support the parents in their process. So to offer individual sessions for them, because often the parents focus so much on the child that their own needs are so much in the background. So how we can bring an understanding for their process. And then in the third area, how we can bring our ideas and the quality of our work to professionals. So that it's kind of individual sessions for the child, individual sessions for the parents, and then workshops, classes in different formats for parents and professionals. That's the basic, this idea of this project in many forms. Also, we're talking about online format now, and maybe at some point developing a project also for now. Actually, there are also BMC practitioners and and SMEs and EDMEs and other somatic practitioners we included in the kind of in this workshop part. But the idea is maybe even develop something for people who already have been a bit further in the BMC path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that I would like just to also point out that the different steps we already did, maybe to get, I mean, together or alone. I think Thomas came with this idea maybe 2 years ago. And
Yes,
and so we made a kind of plan to do kind of model or pilot projects in different communities, also including BMC practitioners or IDMEs, but also the parents. And so you did in Grenoble, the first one, There was another one in Bratislava in February last year. And then it stopped because of pandemic. But what was actually beautiful, what I feel is a kind of demonstrating our view of the work, is that there was an interest from Romanian group of parents who asked the School for Body Mind Centering for some support in this work. And Thomas connected to this woman, and they they arranged our visit in Romania. So for me, this is amazing, like how the environment really called for this work, and they are still interested and without knowing anything. So I think we have different ways of kind of feeding in to the pot of the project.
And one idea is also to offer more intensive, like what we did in Bucharest was we were there for 5 days and we worked every day with the children. And taking that idea, I would like to offer like a week for parents, families to come here where I live, and or maybe also in Bratislava. I mean, it's not fixed on one place, but to come for an intensive time to work with the child and the parents, and maybe do a little workshop or something. So because also the learning, if the learning is condensed like that, then it's in a way it's more convincing because you see the results of the work immediately. If you do a meeting once a week, it's a different rhythm, and it's also not so easy for people to come and
yeah, that's very clarifying, like the sense of these three areas being connected and the possibility of through intensive learning experiences to connect these three spheres of facilitation in a way, which is the more intimate one with the family and the child, and the more extended one, which is supporting the parents that support the children, and then also extending this to the professional community, to the other professionals that work, that might work with them, I understand, in the future. So we also work with them for a while, but then other professionals that might want to see how do we explore our tools and our approach in this field of infant development. So there's this network that you were mentioning at the beginning, less of a local and more of a network intervention or educational process.
Thank you, Patricia, for your inspiring guidance.
Thank you for having me in the conversation. I'm very looking forward to see how the project evolves, and if we can have a further conversation to gather the harvest, the outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Anka. Talk to you soon.
Yes, take care.
Take care.